One of the things that is behind this Finland success is that we have been systematically working on making our school system both equitable and good quality for the last 40 years. So we haven't really had any major turns in different reforms that most other countries have had. And since the beginning, 40 years ago, Finland started to build a system that is particularly providing equal opportunity for each and every child to be successful. And that type of school system looks very different because it must include elements that will help particularly those who come from poor families or from the family where parents do not have a high education, or there may be some other issues. And that's why the things like healthy school meal and medical and other health services provided in each and every school every day for everybody, and counseling and support for children who need more help through special education have become a kind of integral important elements of Finnish school system. But this could have not been possible without having teachers that are better educated. So we also upgraded our teacher education from teacher colleges to our research universities, so that since late 1970s all the teachers in Finland must have at least master's degree from one of our research universities, and that's of course guarantees that there's a good quality and also ability in every school to fulfill this program. And then probably thirdly, somewhere in the early 1990s, Finland decided to radically decentralize the system that was until then run from the top to the schools, and now we have a system that is very decentralized, and schools have a lot of autonomy and teachers have professional independence to decide how they want to fulfill and try to accomplish these aims and principles and ideals that we have in our education policy. So these could probably be some of the key elements that we have tried to build into our education system. And let me say once again that there's no secret there. I think this is a very common sense of thinking that we have been trying to employ during the last 4 decades. Anybody who wants to turn around the whole system, and this was the initial idea in Finland, that we were not happy with just changing some schools. We wanted to change the whole system, and of course in the early 1970s we had no idea how long it will take. So it was a kind of a dream for the future that we want to someday fulfill. And it took probably about 25 years before we had more kind of a reliable evidence that there has been some success in this. One of the lessons from Finland is really that if anybody wants to turn around the whole system, whether it's the state of Texas or the entire United States, you need a program that is going far beyond one presidency or one term in the Congress or any political institution, because that's the key. You cannot really. That's what Finland is showing to the world, that you can do only very little in 4 years or even 8 years. That you need to have a longer program, not necessarily 25 years, but it must go beyond 1 decade. I think it's very important to keep in mind that although Finland is a small, rather homogeneous and relatively wealthy state in Northern Europe, that our school system has not always been so good as it is now. Actually, if we go back to the time that I was mentioning before, 40 years ago, we had a considerable issue with equity in the system because of the nature of the structure of the old school system that was dividing children into those who normally went all the way to universities, and then those children who often came from poor, uneducated farmer families, for example, whose education normally ended at the age of 15. So in these 40 years we have been able to turn around also the performance of the system to have both high quality and high equity. I often say that in Finland probably most parts of the explanation of Finnish education's success internationally in somehow goes back to the outer school factors. In other words, how children are treated through health and family policies and youth and even sports within our society and culture as well. how well parents are supported overall through healthcare and many other things that automatically influence how well they are able to help and support their children. Economy, of course, is very important, innovation policies and many other things. And if you look at Finland's performance in many of these social areas related to families and young people, or economy or business or innovation, technology, many of these things, you will realize that Finland is doing fairly well in all of these areas. In many ways, the Finnish education, and maybe Finnish society as a whole, is following this principle of less is more or less is better in a way. And it seems to be, at least in Finland, that the quality of learning outcomes, the quality of the system doesn't really depend on how many hours teachers teach, or how long school days, or how many school days children have in a school, or how much money you spend on the entire system, or how much you do standardized testing. This testing issue is one thing in Finland, that we seem to be doing very little external standardized testing on our schools and children, and still get very high results back there. So I think this is just the nature of education, and school education particularly, that the quantity is not always the best solution to issues and challenges, particularly when it deals with the concerns the children's learning and school's performance. It's true that we have shorter school days in Finland, and Finnish children, if you just calculate the number of lessons or classes that they sit, it's much less than here in the United States and most other countries. Here in the United States, you have everything it takes to educate great teachers, because the teacher education in the United States, in many parts of the country here, has really been a model and inspiration for Finland and many other countries. So the question is not that you wouldn't know here how to educate great teachers. I think one of the issues you have here, that American teachers are relatively lower paid than those in Finland and many other countries. So I think the pay is certainly one issue, and that's why you are not probably able to get more young people considering to become teachers. I think it's also, if you follow the Finnish example, I think it's also a good point to think whether teachers should have a master's degree, and if master's degree is required as a basic qualification, what should it entail? So what type of master's degrees we are talking about? And that's why I think what Finland has done to have a really deep study in education and pedagogy is one of those things. But then thirdly, I think United States it's probably a good idea to take a little bit closer look at how the teachers' work in the schools look like, and how much the work in the school nowadays is really driven by trying to enhance children's curiosity, creativity, deeper learning, understanding, cooperation, all these things, and how much attention teachers are forced to pay to other things through the accountability and testing and all the other things. And I think, and actually know that there are many young people here in the United States who leave teaching, leave their schools, because they cannot take these things anymore, because they think that they are too far away from this kind of essence of what they think learning is. And that's why I think it's not, here in America, it's not only how well and how much you educate teachers or how much you pay them, it's also how does the environment look like where they are asked to perform and do these things with their children. And Finland can serve as one inspiration, but not the only one. You can see the similar types of things in many other countries like Canada and Singapore and even China nowadays. You will see a very different type of teaching profession that may inspire Americans also to think again these learning and teaching and learning conditions in schools. When I have a chance to meet educators and speak to people here in the United States, I always remind them that you have all the innovations, you have everything that it takes here in America to build a great school system. So you don't need to innovate, you don't need to create new ideas anymore, you don't need to travel around the world and look for great ideas, because they are all here. The question really is that how you will be able to put these pieces together and move to the next level of creating schools that are really good for each and every child. This equity call, how would the American school system look like that takes equity more seriously, would be probably a kind of a recommendable thing to do based on these lessons from Finland and other countries.